All right, let's get into all this cybersecurity stuff you sent me. It looks like we've got articles about ransomware. Oh, and some pretty deep technical dives into certain threats, huh? And even some stuff about Bluesky, so I guess we're figuring out how to stay safe online these days.
You got it. And it's interesting, how everyone's being targeted now, right? We're talking about people getting tricked by phishing scams and even like huge organizations facing attacks on all their systems.
Oh yeah, speaking of attacks, did you see this? Apple had to patch a zero-day vulnerability. It's called CVE 2025-24200. It could have let someone turn off USB restricted mode on iPhones and iPads, which basically means like giving someone access to data even on a locked device.
Yeah, that's true. But there's one important thing here. You needed someone to actually have the device, like physically. So that probably means most people weren't really the target.
Yeah.
It's more likely this was for, well, certain people, high profile maybe. They might even use some pretty sneaky spyware like Pegasus or Paragon.
So, not something most of us have to worry about, but still kind of creepy to think about. Makes you wonder what else is out there.
Exactly. And even though that vulnerability is patched now, it just reminds us that, security is always changing. Now, on a bigger scale, there's this Dragos industrial ransomware analysis for Q4 2024. And, well, it's not good news. The report says ransomware is becoming a huge problem, especially for some industries.
I mean, we know ransomware is bad, right? But what makes this record different? Is it just more of the same, or is there something new to worry about?
Well, it shows some pretty scary trends. For example, ransomware groups are using cloud platforms to steal data before they lock it up. That makes it even harder to even notice it happening. Imagine, not only are your systems frozen, but all your sensitive data is just out there.
That's scary. And are they just going after anyone, or do they pick certain targets?
Oh, they're definitely going after specific sectors, yeah. Like manufacturing, transportation, and anything with industrial control systems were hit hard last quarter. For example, Recope, that's Costa Rica's energy company, they were totally shut down by an attack and had to do everything manually. And the Stoli Group, well, they actually filed for bankruptcy because of the disruption from ransomware. And then there's, closer to home, the Pittsburgh Regional Transit. They had to delay buses and trains for hours because of an attack.
Wow, that's serious stuff. Makes you realize ransomware isn't just a tech problem, it affects everyone.
Exactly. And these attacks show how important it is to have, really strong cybersecurity, especially for those really crucial systems and businesses that handle all that sensitive data.
It does seem like attackers are getting smarter and
Yeah.
affecting more and more people. Now, something a little less intense. Let's talk about Bluesky, this new social network that's been getting popular. It's all about privacy, which I know a lot of people like. But I was reading an article from Rapid7, and it turns out even Bluesky isn't immune to all this.
Yeah, no, platform is completely safe, right? It's true, Bluesky has some nice privacy features, but you still got to watch out for things like malware, phishing, and people pretending to be someone they're not.
Okay, so what can people on Bluesky do to stay safe? Anything specific from that article?
Well, it says securing your account is really important. Use a strong password and turn on that two-factor authentication,
Hmm?
basic stuff. They also suggest thinking about single sign-on and DNS management, but those might be a little too techy for some people.
So good security habits are important no matter what you're using. What about bad content, though? Does Bluesky have anything built in to deal with that?
It does, actually. The article mentions they use these things called moderation lists and labels. It kind of filters out the bad stuff. It's almost like having a security guard for your feed, I guess. You can even customize those lists and labels so you control what you see. That helps you avoid the bad stuff.
That's pretty cool. It seems like they're trying to deal with the challenges of a decentralized platform, which is good. Okay, let's shift gears now and talk about something that might sound a bit intimidating. Uh, Least privilege access for AI.
Good point. There's a great article in the AWS security blog about this, focusing on Amazon Bedrock, a service for building AI apps. It's a bit technical, but it highlights something crucial about AI, limiting access to important data.
So even if we trust the AI itself, we still have to think about how it's using our data.
For sure. Think about it. Generative AI is really powerful, right? It can make text, images, even code, all based on what it learns from data. But that power means we need to be careful. If an AI tool can see more data than it needs, there's a bigger chance that data could be misused or leaked.
Okay, so how do we actually do this least privilege thing? It sounds good, but how does it work in practice?
Well, the AWS article talks about strategies for restricting permissions at different stages of using Amazon Bedrock. They cover stuff like model selection, adaptation, deployment, and even the inference stage, which is when the AI actually produces outputs. Basically, it's about giving the AI access to only what it absolutely needs and only when it needs it.
Seems complicated, but I can see why it's so important, especially with AI becoming more common everywhere. Now let's talk about another technical area that often gets overlooked, Linux security. There's this Elastic Security Labs blog that talks about how attackers can exploit something called pluggable authentication modules, PAM for short.
PAM is this powerful framework you see. It lets system admins manage user authentication in Linux.
Mm.
You could say it's like the main hub for anything login related. But attackers can find weaknesses in PAM to get persistent access to a system.
Persistent access. That doesn't sound good. What does that even mean and how does it work?
Imagine someone breaking into a system and being able to come and go whenever they want, even if you try to lock them out. That's persistent access. The Elastic Security Labs blog gets into the nitty-gritty of how attackers can mess with PAM to do this.
So it's not just about breaking in once, it's about making a back door they can always use. Pretty scary.
It is. And it shows how we need strong monitoring and security, even on systems that people think are more secure, like Linux. It just goes to show that attackers are always looking for ways in, no matter what operating system you're using.
And it's not just these complex systems that are at risk. Good old phishing attacks are still around, but they're going beyond email now. Malwarebytes warns about phishing attacks on Android users hiding in malicious apps.
That's right. We tend to think of phishing as something that happens in our email, but it's getting sneakier. They hide malicious code in apps that look totally legit. Maybe they offer some cool feature or even pretend to be an important tool.
So even if an app looks official in the App Store, it could still be dangerous.
Exactly. You got to be careful about what you download, even from official stores. Always check the reviews, look closely at what permissions the app wants, and do some research on the developer before you install anything new on your phone.
It seems like we can never relax. We have these super complex attacks hitting both individuals and organizations, ransomware spreading like wildfire, and now phishing's hiding in our apps. It's a digital minefield out there.
You said it. But the good news is that knowing about these threats is a big part of the battle. If we understand the threats and follow some basic security practices, we can really lower our risk. And speaking of good practices, did you see that Symantec Enterprise blogs post about how companies are implementing SSE, Security Service Edge, I think it stands
Oh,
for?
yeah, SSE. Symantec had a really interesting take on it. They didn't focus on the technical stuff, but more on the challenges companies face when they're trying to adopt SSE.
It's an important point because technology is only part of the solution. They emphasize things like being clear about what you need, getting everyone on board, and starting with a simple version that you can build on.
Yeah, they had that nice phrase. Decide, adopt, optimize. It's a good roadmap for successfully using SSE. You have to understand what you need, then implement a basic version, and then refine it based on what you learn.
Exactly. It's a more practical approach that recognizes that SSE isn't one size fits all. You have to tailor it to your specific organization.
Makes sense. Now, before we go too deep into enterprise security, let's look at a specific threat that's been in the news lately. Sandworm.
Ah, Sandworm. They're linked to Russia's GRU and known for their cyber espionage.
Yeah.
Eclectic IQ released a report on one of their latest campaigns targeting Windows users in Ukraine.
It was like something out of a spy movie. They were using Trojanized Microsoft KMS activation tools and fade Windows updates to spread malware.
Yeah, it's clever because they're targeting people who might be looking to activate Windows or Office without paying, thinking they found a good deal, but actually installing malware that gives Sandworm a backdoor into their system.
So what kind of malware are we talking about here?
The report mentioned two specifically, the backorder loader and dark crystal ARAT, or DShiRAT. These tools let Sandworm stay hidden on a system, gather information, and even control the computer remotely.
So it's not just about stealing data, they can take over the entire system.
Exactly. And the report goes into detail about how they do it. They use a mix of techniques like scheduled tasks, DLL injection, and defense evasion to make their malware difficult to detect and remove.
DLL injection, what's that?
It's a way for them to put their malicious code into legitimate processes that are already running on the victim's computer. It makes it harder for security software to find and block the malware because it's basically hiding in plain sight.
Sneaky.
Yeah.
So they're using these tools to spread malware, but what's the end goal? What are they after?
It seems their main objective is espionage. They're going after people and organizations in Ukraine to get sensitive information, probably related to the current conflict.
It just shows how real cyber warfare is. And the stakes are high. It's not just governments and militaries at risk. regular people can get caught in the middle.
Absolutely. It shows why staying vigilant and having good security practices is so important, no matter who you are or what you do. And speaking of good practices, there are a bunch of articles from the UK's National Cybersecurity Centre, the NCSC, that focus on practical steps for better security.
Oh yeah, the NCSC, they always have good info. What caught your eye in their articles?
Well, they have a free online tool for organizations to check their email security. It helps find weaknesses that could be used for phishing or other email attacks.
That's awesome, especially for smaller organizations that might not have a whole security team.
Exactly. It's a quick and easy way to see how secure your email is and then take steps to improve it.
They also talked about creating a positive security culture. What does that mean, practically speaking?
It means making security everyone's responsibility, not just the IT departments. It's about open communication, encouraging people to report anything that looks suspicious, and learning from mistakes instead of blaming people.
So, creating an environment where people feel safe speaking up about security concerns without worrying about getting in trouble.
Exactly. That can really help prevent problems before they happen.
Their last article was about something that's often overlooked, having a clear process for disclosing vulnerabilities. They even have a toolkit to help organizations create a policy for reporting and fixing vulnerabilities.
That's really important, especially for companies that develop software or run online services. Having a clear process helps make sure security issues are found and fixed quickly before they can be exploited.
It also shows that they care about transparency and responsible disclosure, which builds trust with security researchers and the community in general. It's a win-win for everyone.
Exactly. It's a win-win for everyone.
So we've seen how attackers are using everything, even like our desire for free software. It's a lot to think about. But let's focus on fighting back. What did the NCSC have to say about building stronger security?
They've got some good advice. First, they really push organizations to check their email security with their free online tool. It helps you find those weak spots that can be used for phishing and other email attacks.
Seems like a no-brainer, especially for smaller organizations that might not have the budget for a big security audit.
Exactly. It's quick, easy, and it lets you see how secure your email really is so you can improve your defenses.
They also talked about building a positive security culture, right? What does that actually look like?
It's about making security everyone's job, not just the IT guys. It means open communication, people feeling okay reporting potential threats, and learning from mistakes instead of pointing fingers.
So creating an environment where people can speak up about security concerns without being afraid to get in trouble.
Exactly. That can really make a difference in stopping problems before they get big.
Their last article was about having a clear process for disclosing vulnerabilities. They even have a toolkit to help organizations create a policy for reporting and fixing those vulnerabilities.
That's super important, especially for organizations developing software or running online services. A clear process ensures those security issues are found and fixed fast, minimizing the risk.
It also shows they care about transparency and responsible disclosure, right? That builds trust with security researchers and the community.
Absolutely. It's a win-win for everyone. And while those tips are for organizations, individuals play a big role in keeping things secure too, right? We need to be aware of the threats, be careful about what we click on and download, and secure our accounts and devices.
Like building our own little security fortresses, layer by layer. But even with the best defenses, there's always the chance of human error.
That's why knowing about these things is so important. We need to understand the tricks attackers use, like phishing and social engineering, so we can spot them and avoid them.
Speaking of phishing, that Malwarebytes article about those bad apps targeting Android users was a real wake-up call. Attackers are always coming up with new tricks, trying to get what they want.
Right. Those apps, they use clever tricks to steal your info. They might pretend to be something you need, offer some cool features, or even try to scare you into acting quickly.
So even if an app looks official on the App Store, it might not be safe.
Exactly. Be careful what you download, even from official stores. Always check the reviews, look at what permissions the app wants, and research the developer before you install anything new.
Back to the Eclectic IQ report and the risks of using pirated software.
It might seem like an easy way to save money, but it can really cost you in terms of security. That pirated software is often full of malware, which can steal your data, mess up your accounts, or even lock up your files and demand a ransom.
So you might be breaking the law and putting yourself at huge risk. Not worth it.
Nope, not at all. Let's go back to something else from the Eclectic IQ report. How the Sandworm Group is using those fake Microsoft KMS activation tools.
Right, those tools. It's a sneaky way to target people trying to save money by activating Windows or Office without paying.
They think they're getting a good deal, but they're actually installing malware that gives sandworm a way into their system.
And it's not just individuals. The report mentioned a case where someone at a utility company installed a pirated version of Microsoft Office, and it ended up compromising their whole system.
It shows how even something that seems harmless can have huge consequences, especially when it comes to cybersecurity.
Absolutely. So once sandworm gets into a system through these fake tools, what can they do?
The report gets technical, explaining how they use things like scheduled tasks, DLL injection, and defense evasion to stay hidden, gather information, and control the infected system.
Wait, hold on. What exactly is DLL injection?
It's a way for attackers to put their bad code into programs that are already running on your computer. It's like hiding in plain sight, making it harder for security software to find and block it.
That's pretty sneaky. The report also mentioned two specific types of malware used: the backorder loader and dark crystal art.
Those are powerful tools that give Sandworm a lot of control. They can use them to steal data, watch what you're doing, and even run commands remotely.
It's like they have complete control. So they use those fake tools to deliver the malware, but what's the real goal? What are they after?
It seems their main goal is espionage. They're targeting people and organizations in Ukraine to get sensitive information, probably related to the conflict.
It's a reminder that cyber warfare is a real threat and the stakes are high. Going back to those technical details, the report said Sandworm uses scheduled tasks to stay on infected systems.
Right. Scheduled tasks are basically instructions that tell your computer to do something at a specific time or regularly. Sandworm uses this to keep their malware running even if you restart your computer.
Like setting an alarm for their malware to wake up and get back to work. What about defense evasion? What does that mean?
It's all the tricks attackers use to avoid being detected by security software. It could be anything from disguising their malware to turning off security features on your computer.
It's like they're always trying to stay one step ahead.
They are. The eclectic IQ researchers even found comments and debug symbols in Russian in the malware, which points to Sandworm.
It's like leaving fingerprints at a crime scene, but in code.
Exactly. And while this campaign was focused on Ukraine, the researchers found connections between several malicious websites, which suggest a bigger campaign with potential victims everywhere.
So this isn't just a problem for one region, it's a global issue.
Absolutely. It highlights how important it is to have a global perspective on cybersecurity threats. What happens in one place can quickly spread to others.
That is a lot to take in. We've got sophisticated attackers using sneaky tactics, malware hidden in pirated software, and even cyber warfare. It can feel pretty overwhelming.
I know it can be. But remember, we're not helpless. By understanding the threats and taking the right precautions, we can greatly reduce our risk.
Okay, so let's talk about those precautions. What can individuals and organizations do to protect themselves?
Well, we've touched on some already. Strong passwords, multi-factor authentication, being careful about what we click on and download, and keeping software up to date. But there's more we can do.
Like what?
Well, we can all benefit from learning more about cybersecurity. There are tons of resources online, websites, blogs, podcasts, you name it.
Don't forget books.
Of course, there are some great books out there that can give you a deeper understanding of cybersecurity.
So education is key. What about practical things we can do in our everyday lives to be more secure?
One simple thing is to be more mindful of what we're doing online. Be careful what you click on, be suspicious of strange emails and websites, and don't share personal info on sites that aren't secure.
It's like being street smart, but online.
Exactly. And another important step is securing our home networks. Use strong passwords for your Wi-Fi, turn on encryption, and keep your devices updated with the latest security patches.
And our phones and tablets, right, those are just as vulnerable as our computers.
Absolutely. We need to be just as careful about securing our mobile devices. Strong passwords, screen locks, and being careful about the apps we download are crucial.
It's a lot to keep in mind, but it's all about forming good habits and making security part of our routine.
You got it. And remember, security isn't something you do once and forget about. It's an ongoing process of learning, adapting, and improving how we protect ourselves.
It's a journey, not a destination.
Exactly. And with that, let's take a quick break and then we'll wrap things up with some final thoughts on staying safe in this ever-changing digital world.
So we've really dug into the dark side of the digital world, haven't we? From sneaky malware to full-blown cyber espionage.
Yep.
It's easy to feel overwhelmed by all this. But before we just give up, let's talk about how we can protect ourselves. It seems like being aware is a big part of it.
Oh, absolutely. Knowing what you're dealing with is the first step to staying safe. Think of it like this. If you were out hiking in bear country, right? You'd learn how to spot their tracks. You'd know to store your food properly, and maybe even carry some bear spray, just in case. It's the same online.
So instead of bear tracks, we need to watch out for phishing emails and those suspicious links. And our bear spray is those strong passwords, the multi-factor authentication, and keeping our antivirus software up to date.
Exactly. And just like you wouldn't leave your campsite open in bear country, you shouldn't leave your devices and accounts unprotected online.
It's about being proactive, right? Taking charge of our own safety online. We can't just rely on technology or security companies to protect us. We have to do our part.
Right, and that starts with learning about this stuff.
Yeah.
We need to understand how these threats work, how to spot them, and what we can do to reduce our risk.
And that learning never really stops, does it? The threats are always changing, so we have to stay informed and adapt. It's not like a one-time thing. It's a constant process.
You got it. Now remember that Symantec Enterprise blogs post about adopting SSE. They had an interesting point about balancing security with usability.
Oh, yeah, trying to have strong security without making things too complicated for users, like trying to build a fortress that's also a comfortable home.
It's tough to get it right. Too much security and people get frustrated and it slows them down. Too little and you're vulnerable. Finding the right balance is key.
And that might take some experimenting. Those NCSC articles about building a good security culture and having a clear process for disclosing vulnerabilities, those emphasize being flexible and adapting.
Exactly. Security isn't about finding one perfect solution. It's about constantly looking at your defenses, finding weak spots, and making changes as needed.
It's about making security everyone's responsibility.
Exactly. And that brings us to our final thought for today. We've talked about so many threats and ways to defend against them, but one of the best things you can do is try to think like an attacker.
Now, that sounds a little strange. Why would we want to think like the bad guys?
It's about perspective. If you put yourself in their shoes, you can start to see those weak spots in your own systems and habits.
So instead of just reacting to threats, we're trying to find those vulnerabilities before the attackers do.
Exactly. It's a great way to stay ahead of the game and anticipate what might come next. There are even frameworks and methods, like threat modeling, that can help you with this.
That's a great point. It's like learning self-defense. You're not just memorizing moves, you're learning how an attacker might come at you and how to defend yourself.
Exactly. And just like with self-defense, the more you practice, the better prepared you'll be for real-life situations.
So our big takeaway today is this. Be proactive, stay informed, and don't be afraid to think like the bad guys. Just a little bit.
And remember, security is a journey, not a destination. Keep learning, keep adapting, and keep improving those defenses.
Well said. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive into the world of cybersecurity. We hope you found it informative and maybe even a little empowering.
We certainly did. Stay curious, stay vigilant, and stay safe out there.